Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome back to this week's lesson video. And today, I wanted to do a topic that people usually tend to come up and ask me about, and it's inner voice movement. And this is going to be kind of an extension on the counterpoint video, and it's going to be some stuff that maybe some people might know. But if you haven't looked into counterpoint and you haven't looked into any of that kind of stuff, I'm going to put a card up here. Yeah, it's up here. Where there'll be a link to the counterpoint video just talking about some of the basic rules of counterpoint. So let's just dive right into the lesson. Inner voice movement. Why is inner voice movement so useful? Or why does it sound good? What does it do? What is the purpose of inner voice movement? Why do people ask about it? Well, when it comes to chordal playing, I find it adds a really nice texture, especially if you're doing solo guitar stuff. And you'll see, especially, I tend to use it when there are kind of 3 voices or 4 voices. If there are 3 voices, the middle voice is going to be what I cast as the middle voice. If it's 4 voices, it'll be the 2 inner voices. And there are a couple of ways you can start working with inner voice movement, but what does it do? It gives a little more, it acts as kind of like a harmonic glue of sorts, and kind of connects voicings or motions or chord movements together and kind of acts as a thread that holds it all. So some people might be familiar with viola jokes and how the viola doesn't really do an awful lot. Now, why am I talking about string writing? Well, that inner voice is doing a lot to kind of hold the other parts together. Could the other parts in a string quartet stand on their own? Absolutely. But that viola, or first violin, second violin, and viola, that inner voice movement between all of the other voices is what's really adding another depth of character and a depth to the sound. Same thing can be said for horns, same thing can be said for alto lines in 4-part vocal harmony, and the same can be said for piano voicings and for guitar. So I'm going to kind of talk about 3 things I keep in mind, or keep like in the back of my mind when I'm referring to inner voice movement and things you should think about. Bear in mind, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to be doing all of this with 3-note voicings, right? So, first things first, the first thing you can do to start thinking about inner voice movement is actually, ironically, not think about movement. Think of common tones that you can keep with that inner voice. So for example, here I'm in C# minor. I'm going to kind of use the improvisation I did in the beginning as kind of like a loose context, if you would. So I've got 3 voices, right? And I'm in C# minor. And you'll see sometimes I'll do like that motion. Now what's happening? This tone here is being held through all of those chords. Still being held. Can even hold this over D over. When I go to 4 voices, I can hold that motion or that note to keep it as a continuity through all of the harmony, right? So, what does this do? It's acting, as I said, as a glue and kind of keeping everything together. So, ironically, the first thing you can do is just not move at all. But then let's say you want to add some movement and add some motion, and it creates that pianistic effect. What can you do, or are there any guidelines that I could offer to make this a little easier? Consider stepwise movement. And actually, if you go back to the rules of 4-part vocal writing, generally what's recommended for 4-part vocal writing is that you don't really jump more than a minor third. It's actually another rule of counterpoint, unless it's a soprano or bass voice. Inner voices you don't want to be jumping around too much. You want a lot of conjunct or stepwise motion, because it's going to act as a smooth transition in your voice leading. So, the next thing I'll do is kind of consider what melodies can I put in that inner voice. So let's say my context is I want C sharp to A, right? C sharp minor to A major. So one thing I can do is have that inner voice act as the transition. And I'm using a stepwise melody. So I can do... And it's very nice because now the top voice is no longer the present voice. It's not what you hear first. It takes on a very different character. So I would start experimenting. What does it feel like to move one voice? Take different chord voicings. And what you can do, this is a little exercise, take any triad, take any voice, and then see what happens if you move it by a half step. That's a nice one, right? What happens if you move it down a half step? Right? And you see it just suddenly starts making your solo playing a little more colorful. Now, what happens if you start creating little melodies? This is kind of part 3. So if I were to just do a quick recap, first thing we do is keep in mind common tones. What voices can I keep, if I can keep any, for continuity? That's one way of using it, and probably the easiest to get into if you've never worked with inner voice movement. Then you can do basic stepwise motion. So let's say see, just have the voice move up or down stepwise, half step or whole step. Then you can start creating little melodies, like what I did before. But let's make them slightly more complex. Right? And the thing about guitar is suddenly these inner voices can turn into your principal voice, and it just adds another layer of depth to solo playing or self-accompaniment. They become very useful. So to kind of wrap this up, how can you use this more effectively? Well, for one, you can use it in your solo playing. Add some depth, add some character, add some contrast. Solo playing doesn't always have to be either single note lines, and it doesn't have to be pure block chords. It can take on many forms, and especially with the counterpoint stuff I was talking about in the other video. You can use this in your accompaniment to give the impression that there's more happening than what is really going on in the actual context. Especially great if you're accompanying singers, or if you're accompanying a wind instrument or a soloist. It's really beautiful. And even in larger contexts, like let's say, I don't know, a trio or a quartet, it just gives your comping another texture, or it's another tool in your toolkit that you can use to just add some variety. So I hope this quick lesson was helpful for you guys. As always, please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the videos. I'm always uploading every single week. And please do leave something in the comments if you enjoyed, if this helped you, or if you want me to tackle any particular lesson ideas. I'm always writing down stuff on the list I have and tackling things kind of one by one. So this was one of those topics that's been around for a little while that I only just got around to. So I'm about to jump onto Patreon to do the extended lesson for this week. I shall see you in the next video. Take care, guys.